Osaka when I am from London. So a little bit about my story. I was always doing odd jobs when I was younger. I wasn't the best student at school, but I always got away with good grades and had a pretty good memory. So used to annoy people in class quite a lot. And I got good grades, but I always knew I wanted to be in business. So I effectively started my working life at 18. And it was the beginning of a journey that's really ended up to where I am now 20 years later. I started by flipping burgers in a restaurant. That was my very first job and the only job I could get. I didn't have any suitable qualifications to do exactly what I wanted to do, but I did definitely want to earn some money. So I had a part-time job and I went to university and I studied languages, but whenever I had the opportunity, I always worked. But at the same time, what were the other things that I was always interested in, and what were the things that led me to do some of the other things I'm going to tell you about? When I was little, my father used to take me to school every single morning. It was one of my favourite things. And I don't know about you, but if you walk to school with your cousins, your family, your brothers or your sisters, or your parents took you to school, the thing that I used to do with my father was he used to talk to me a little bit about his job and a little bit about what he was doing. And in the 1980s in the United Kingdom, a lot of businesses were privatising. So you had the banks, you had the electricity company, the gas company, they were all privatising their businesses. So it was possible to buy some shares on a stock exchange. And whilst my father didn't have a huge amount of money, he really wanted to invest a little bit in these businesses that he thought potentially had a future and would give him some growth, some capital growth. So on the way to school every morning, we used to get the newspaper and we used to look at the share prices in the back of the newspaper. And I used to have a look at the price every single day and look at the growth of stocks and shares. So when I got to university and I was studying, again, I wasn't the best student. What did I do every day? I read the newspaper, I read the business pages, and I always looked at the stock prices of all the stocks and shares that I had been following for some time. So in my head, this gave me an idea, which I think if I'd have told my family about at the time, they wouldn't have been so happy, but I was able to access some loans to get through university. And whilst I was earning, I wasn't earning the sort of money that I really wanted to earn to allow me to travel and to buy things I really wanted to buy. So I took out my loans and I started trading the stock market. So what did I trade and how did I know how to trade? Honestly, I can't tell you that I had all the answers, but I was very fortunate to hopefully have had some intuition and some good lessons and life lessons when listening to my father. So every day I would go to university and we would study all day and then we'd come back home. But as a special treat, if we were celebrating, there was a pizza restaurant that we used to go to where I was at university. And that was how we said someone's birthday, something very special, we used to go to this pizza restaurant. And it was part of a bigger company that was listed on the stock exchange. And I used to think to myself, every time I went to this restaurant, it was always really busy, there was always a queue, I always was full of people who were really enjoying themselves. And every time I went to a different city in my country, the same thing happened. You got the same quality product, there was always a queue, it was always really busy, and I always got something I really enjoyed. So I thought to myself, and I know this is not how you're taught to look at a company, I thought to myself, they must be doing something good here, so I bought some shares. Anyway, throughout university, I traded shares in companies that I felt very comfortable about, places I shopped, places I visited, a supermarket that was my favourite chain. And then as time went by, I started to research these companies, I started to look at more information about them and to get a little bit more of a better idea about how they were performing. And to be honest with you, I made quite a lot of money from my student loans, so I was able to pay my loans back very, very quickly, and I had quite a lot to spare. So I get to university and I really decide that I would like to be in finance and I'd like to work in a bank. So actually, my background is in media. I write about business now as a result of my business career. So I started my life as a banker. How did I get this experience when I had no qualifications, when I had no previous experience, when I didn't know anyone in a bank? Well, I spent my university years trading my student loans. So really, I was kind of doing the job that a lot of people in banks do before, when they were trained when they get there. So I wrote to the banks. I wrote a letter to 10, 15 banks that I read about in newspapers. And I wrote them a letter about why I wanted to work there. And I sent my CV, all nicely presented with all my grades and all the information. But I also sent a sheet which showed my profit and loss account from trading all these different stock. So what happened was, it was the first year of university, everyone was trying to find a job in a restaurant or in a supermarket, and I get a job in a massive global investment bank in the stock market division. This was the best news I'd ever had because I really wanted to travel and go on holiday that summer. I didn't have enough cash. I banks, and instead of earning, for me, £50 a week, where I would have been working in a restaurant, I was going to be paid £350 a week to work in a bank. So what did I do? I took one of these internship offers at the beginning of the summer, one of these internship offers at the end of the summer, and in the middle, where I had this 2.5, 3-week period, I took this awesome trip to Mexico. I really wanted to go to South America. I wouldn't have been able to afford it, but I thought to myself, I'm working hard all this summer, I have these amazing opportunities. I'm going to go travel and see Mexico. So every summer, something similar would happen. I would have an interesting job. I sent my CV. I demonstrated an entrepreneurial way of why they should hire me, even though I wasn't studying economics, or even though I wasn't necessarily studying the thing that you would think you really need to get to where I was wanting to get to. So I left university, and I worked in a bank for 6 or 7 years. And why did I do that when I was always quite entrepreneurial? I did that because I really wanted to gain experience. I really wanted to understand financial statements. I wanted to understand legal issues, accounting. I wanted to understand what I had been doing naturally myself, which was trading. I wanted to understand mergers and acquisitions. So really, the first 6 or 7 years of my career, I was working in an investment bank, very long hours. I mean, I usually got in at 7. I very rarely left before 11 p.m. But I gained this huge insight into the world of business. On top of learning, I also met the most incredible people. So much like being here this evening, and I hope all of you know each other, and if you don't, I would encourage everybody to introduce themselves to each other afterwards. You never know who's going to be able to help you with what you're going to do next. So I was in the investment bank, but it also meant I worked with great and amazing people my age, people older than me, people more experienced. I worked with amazing clients. I worked with lawyers, accountants, marketing people, catering, absolutely everything, events. So by the time I left, I had this incredible address book of interesting people I otherwise would never have met. So that's partially what this is this evening, I'm sure, which is networking. Introduce yourselves to each other. Maybe someone has a need for a service and someone here can provide that, and then you can provide a service back. So these are the kind of places where you can build businesses. But it got to 26, 27, and I decided I really wanted to build my own business. I had all this experience. I'd saved quite a lot of money, so I thought to myself, if I get a job somewhere else, very interesting, and I could earn more money, but if I start a business myself, I've saved enough so that I could pay my rent and live very carefully for at least a year, maybe a year and a half, and I had lots of motivations for doing it. First of all, I really wanted to be empowered to make my own decisions and to build something the way that I thought that I wanted to build it. Second of all, I wanted to have a family, and I wanted to be able to be more flexible about how and when I worked. And third of all, to be honest, if you ask my family and my friends, they always used to say the same things about me. I always did this well, or always did that well, or when I was 3, my father still has a school report from when I was at nursery saying, Emma draws lovely pictures of coloured pebbles, but she's a little bit bossy. So I had it in me that I knew I wanted to do my own thing, and I always did things my way. So I made a decision to start a business. How did I make a decision of what business to start? How did I come up with that light bulb moment, that first thing that I was going to do? To be honest with you, it's exactly the way that most of the people I know in business came up with an idea. It's partially a mixture of luck, accident, conversations, networking, reading the newspaper, and suddenly you have this moment where you think, hold on a second, this is a thing that I could do. So what did I do? My first business was the company that I floated on the London Stock Exchange. So in terms of where that puts me in the kind of global business community, I'm the youngest person in the world to float a company, or no one has ever been able to find me any data to show me otherwise, and that's what I've been told. So you never know. And I hope that someone here isn't going to beat me at that. So I'm just saying, I'm here to inspire you, but no beating at me at my own statistics. Never mind, because I like that. So at 29, I floated a company. How did I get the money together, the idea? When I was working in investment banking and when I was networking and always out and about, people would say to me, I love your attitude, I love what you're doing, sounds really interesting. If you ever need some money for a business, if you ever need some help, if you ever need an idea, if you ever need support, if you ever need a lawyer and you can't afford it, always come and see me. So that's what I did. I kept in touch with everybody in lots of different ways. Did email, these days there's Twitter, there's LinkedIn. I hope everyone here is on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and if you're not, I would encourage you to do so. It's free and it's a great way to remember people and connect to people and build your address book. And also, it's a great way for if one of you writes me an email and I think, who was that person? I go and have a look and I see you're connected to lots of interesting people. You know, there's someone interesting. I should be in touch. So I went to see all of these people who'd said that they'd be interested in backing me or helping me, and they all said, you know, these are the ideas, these are some of the things you could do. One person said to me, I have this small company, it's miles from London, it's really profitable, but it's not really growing, there's no one dynamic in it. I really need someone like you who can help grow it. Then someone else said to me, I'd really like you in my business. You're full of enthusiasm, you understand financial statements, you've had experience in banking, you understand capital markets. I'd really like you to get involved in our business. So I started to say, hold on a second, there's all these people with interesting, profitable businesses that aren't really doing anything with them, and there are all these tiny, small companies everywhere, and sort of mostly in property and property services or things to do with property. What if I put them all together? If I put them all together, I build something bigger. So that's what I did. I raised some money. I went to see a lot of people. I wrote what I would call the business plan of business plans. It took me a really long time. You know, you can never perfect a business plan. It changes every 5 minutes. So I know a business plan is a really challenging thing to do. But I set up some really broad parameters of the things that were important. I put what I planned to do with the money, how I was planning on paying people back, what their return would be, what my strategy was going to be for building the business. And sometimes I look back and wonder how I did it, but when I was 29, we floated on the London Stock Exchange, and you know, these are things, these are moments that you carry with you, and I'm sure you all have moments where you've achieved something, where you'll remember them forever. I remember the day we floated. I remember going for dinner at what was a really quite a fancy restaurant, and to be honest, I'd invested all of my money in the company too, so whilst I had this exciting business, my bank account wasn't very exciting, but I remember thinking, you have to celebrate. So I had this beautiful dinner, and then many years of hard work followed. So I built that business up. I made a number of acquisitions, I made a number of disposals, I raised more money, and I started to get a little business profile. In that first company, one of the businesses that I bought, which is going to seem a little bit alien to some people here, is I bought a car parking business. So I know that Lusaka is quite crowded, but equally I've spent sort of a couple of days in the eastern provinces where there is so much space, it's incredible. In London, and not just London, but most of the cities and towns in the United Kingdom, there's not enough space. So if you have a car, it needs to be organised where you park it, there needs to be machinery to organise where it goes, you need to pay for your parking. Virtually everywhere in the United Kingdom, even outside your house, you have to pay for where you park. So I thought to myself, there's all these companies doing parking, and none of them were very professional, none of them were very innovative, none of them were very dynamic. You look at their website and there's a picture of a really boring car park. No one needs to see a picture. We all know what a car park looks like. Not very interesting. What are the interesting things you can do? What are the value-added services you can provide? So in my first company, I had this experience with car parking. And I also had this experience where I realised that nobody senior was talking to people about car parking because everyone was talking about big buildings or big shopping centres or big flat developments or houses or residential accommodation. No one was bothering to talk to anybody about their car parks. So I basically went round all of the big property businesses talking about their car park and won a lot of business very fast. So when I sold out of my first business, I thought to myself, what am I going to, now what? What am I going to do next? I still need to earn a living. And people often say, what did you want to be when you were younger? Well, when I was younger, when I was very young, I really wanted to be a rock star ballerina mermaid. That was seriously, that was my ambition. Obviously that changed a little bit over time, but that was my first ambition. But what happened when I had this public company was I had built this parking company up inside it, so I often was called the parking queen. Now, to be honest, this was not something that I didn't wake up one day and think, I want to be the queen of car parks. It's not very glamorous. But what they say is, in England we say, where there's muck, there's brass. Doesn't matter what the business is, doesn't matter how unglamorous it is, if it's profitable, I want to know. So, I'm the queen of parking, I've sold out my business, and all my competitors see that I've sold my business, and I get a couple of messages through, a couple of phone messages, a couple of emails. Some of them said, we're really glad that you're out of parking now, thank goodness, we can... And then some of them said to me, maybe you'll come and work for us. And then the really smart one said to me, we know you're not going to come and work for anybody. You built your own business, you don't want to work for somebody else. How about this? And I got a proposal from a company, probably my biggest competitor, saying, we are really good at hospitals, motorway service stations, We're very good at doing government buildings, but we're not very good with the private sector. It's just not a world we really get into. So how about we fund you to build a parking business? You can use our infrastructure, our resources, we'll give you the cash to start, and you can look at the private sector because that's what you're really good at. So that's what I did in my second business. Instead of being about property and parking, I literally became the queen of parking only. So, as I say, wasn't the most glamorous, but we tried to do things differently. What did we do differently? We were very professional. I'm an ex-banker. There were no ex-finance people in parking. And my business, the business grew for 4.5 years. It was the fastest growing company in the sector every year for 4 years that we traded. What did we do differently? I am very get up and go. Every day is my business. I'm going to knock on a door and I'm going to win some business. I'm going to get us some profile. I'm going to network. I'm going to find some people who are doing business with my competitors. And I'm going to just talk to them and just know where they are. So that when an opportunity comes up for a new piece of business, or if they're not happy with their existing service provider, they think to themselves, who is that woman we spoke to about parking? Remember me, and they come and find me. So that's what happened. And the other thing that happened is that we always did our job very well. We were always professional, always delivered on time. Our work always looked nice. Our sites were always clean. So we also started to get a reputation. People used to recommend us. And obviously, if you have existing customers, that's the best way to grow your business. If you have a happy customer, it's free marketing. Why spend all your money on advertising and marketing if you've got happy customers? They'll do the marketing for you. So I grew that business, and we did innovative and dynamic things. We focused a little bit. You asked me about, you said you write about technology. You don't really think about parking as something where technology is interesting, but we did some things to define ourselves in the sector. So for example, in the United Kingdom, pretty much anywhere you live or work, you need to have a permit to park on the road outside where you live. And it's a nightmare. If you get a permit from a private parking company, it's very expensive. Maybe you can't afford to drive to work. Where are you going to leave your car? But equally, all over the United Kingdom, we have really, really high-rise residential buildings, and a lot of them have car parks underneath. So a lot of people have a flat or a little house, and they have a car park space that they don't use. So how do you put the person with a little house and a driveway in touch with the person who needs to come and drive every day to that part of town and is looking for a place to park their car? I created a website called ineedtopark.co.uk. And what was that? It became the biggest database in the United Kingdom for permit parkers to meet with people who needed spaces. So actually we created a second market. So we catered to the people who needed to park in car parks. Equally, we created an online community where we connect the people who have a space with the people who need it. And we took a small percentage of the transaction every time a transaction was taken. Now, it wasn't a profitable part of my business. It was a very small margin that we took, a very small percentage of the transaction total. But what did it do? It showed everybody in the sector that we were very innovative. We thought differently. Nobody else had done that in the country. So we also used that to define ourselves. That was marketing. That showed we were smart. And also it helped us get indoors. So very often we would be called by a really big company who would say, I have this little car park that needs managing and it's 15 spaces. And we could never make any money by managing 15 spaces in a small town in the middle of nowhere. Where's the business in that? But we could put it on our I Need to Park website. So we gave them a solution when no one else could find a solution for them, which meant when they had a bigger piece of business, we'd already been helpful. So we were already in the door. So we used technology to innovate. We used technology to start dealing with our margins. So for example, if you go to a car park, I don't know if are there car parks in Zambia where they charge you much money to park? I haven't seen any. I've seen one at the airport.
Only at the airport.
Yeah. Okay, so basically the whole of the United Kingdom is like the car park at the airport. It's not fun. It's very expensive. But the other things that you have to remember if you're charging people to park everywhere is you're collecting a lot of cash. And to deposit your cash every day, you've got to take it all the way to the bank, make sure it's secure, pay a margin to the bank. So again, we use technology in our business. So we started to introduce systems like pay by phone. So you actually never had to have cash, you never had to have a credit card. All you had to do was text a number, text your license plate, and that was it. The number if you signed up on the internet, given your credit card details, that was it, the charges were done. So that reduced our costs of having to transport money. It also reduced people having to always have the exact change, because for example, we have lots of coins in the United Kingdom. I've got to be honest, it's quite hot with that light on me, so it's a bit delighted. Oh, it's back on, never mind, it's good. So we did all kinds of innovative things that allowed us to deal with payments, to deal with customers, to do with technology, and I sold that business in May of this year, and that was probably my, with every business things have got bigger. So that was business number 2. What am I doing now? Really that ties in with media and some of the things that were said when I was introduced. In May of this year, I sold my parking business to go full-time on my business called Enterprise Jungle. It is enterprise software, so it's software for very large companies and businesses. So if you think about it, if you work in a big bank or a very large company and you're in the office here, and you have colleagues that are in London or New York or Paris, how are you going to find out who in your company has the information you need? You're pitching tomorrow to Barclays in Zambia, and you're pitching to them about marketing. How do you find someone in your company who maybe knows the people at Barclays, who maybe understands marketing well, who maybe has pitched to Barclays in other countries, so has information about them? How are you going to find that person? So we created, my brother and I, my brother is my business partner, created a business which provides software to solve that challenge. So basically, we're a very disruptive business in the enterprise software market. What does that mean? It means that we are shaking stuff up, and that's got us noticed. So in business number 3, we've built disruptive software that large companies need. We've focused on something which I'd encourage everybody who has a business or is thinking of building a business to focus on, which is sell, design, build. So instead of spending a lot of money building a website, thinking about a product, about a service, we went out to the market, and before we spent any money, we said, is this a service you need? Is this a product you need? So that meant that we didn't have to invest a fortune to find that answer. What it also meant is that we had the idea in our head, we went to see our future customers, and some of them said, yeah, this is the kind of thing we need, but actually we need this too. And we need that too. And maybe don't give us this, but give us that. So really, our future customer helped us build the product that we knew they needed, that we were going to sell to them. So that's my current business. We started, day 1, we had an office in America, where my brother runs it, me in the United Kingdom, and one of our software partners in Australia. So we were able to cover all time zones, and there's always somebody that owns a business awake and working. And we have a team of developers who are all over the world. At the same time, really, that's when, you mentioned media, that's when I started doing a lot more media. As a result of floating my company, starting a lot of businesses, doing quite a lot of mentoring, I started writing some newspaper columns for The Telegraph, which has about 60 million readers, The Wall Street Journal, which you may have heard of, and started doing some radio and some television to hopefully inspire people that are thinking of starting businesses, or to help people that have existing businesses get bigger. So all I can tell you is this: that path has led me to many interesting places, including leading me to Lusaka today. I'm very lucky. I'm here with Barclays Young Futures program, and I know that some people have been through that program that are here today, and with UNICEF who support that. And so my life has been infinitely more interesting, and that's been directly as a result of entrepreneurship and my hard work. So that's a little bit about my story and how I came to be standing in front of you when I'm probably the last person you expected to rock up necessarily before the invite came out. And what I would love to do is invite some questions from some of you, hear about some of your businesses, talk to you about perhaps some of your challenges or some of your successes, and perhaps share some wisdoms from some of the lessons I've learned along the way, because I didn't go to business school. Really, my education was life, and so it's taken 20 years to get this far, and I know some of you have taken 20 minutes or 20 weeks after you've been on the programme.